What's up, comic and pop culture fans? This is James with Hunter Comics. Today we're talking about the worst first impressions that comic book characters have given us. These are the comic book character equivalents of meeting your mother-in-law for the first time and having a diarrhea explosion in her kitchen. These are characters we know and love, but their first appearances don't quite match, or they were just horrific or horrifically written. Let's get into it today, but first things first, don't forget to come down to the antique shop. For this entire week, we're going to do 30% off all Hulk, including keys. And don't forget, at 30,000 subscribers, someone's getting the first appearance of Vision. We're going to start the list off with Negan, the big bad. We all know him from the TV show. Well, his first appearance in comic books wasn't much better. First appearing in the now timeless, earth-shattering Walking Dead 100, Negan quickly solidified himself as the biggest bad in the entire series, overthrowing Governor, Hunter, Shane, and later even Alpha. Dude literally comes on page and wipes out everyone's fan-favorite character in the most disgusting way possibly allowed within comics. It's gross, it's traumatizing, and he sickeningly is joking the entire time. Who is this guy? How dare he kill our beloved Glenn? In time, he actually does become a fan favorite, even to the point of leading the comics and eventually leading the TV show. It's one of the rarest examples of a villain that did something so unforgivable, and yet we still forgave. Next up is Jason Todd. Poor Jason, created in 1983 and very short-lived before his origins were completely rewritten in 87, he initially had a hard time getting off the ground with popularity. Perhaps it's the insanely similar origin story to Dick Grayson in the now retconned first appearance, or perhaps it was him stealing Batman's hubcaps in his more modern, more accurate, updated storytelling. He always just came off as more punky, angry, and violent. Ironically, he's now popular for those exact same reasons, but back then when DC Comics made a voting poll to kill or keep him, the majority voted to have him wiped off. In his death, he actually served a greater purpose than his living stories, in that he was a constant reminder of Batman's worst failure. Their decision to revive him 2 decades later was well received, and he's only grown more popular since. Let's switch on over to Marvel with Black Widow. Before joining up with the Avengers and working alongside the heroes of the Marvel Universe, Black Widow was an agent for the Russian government. Not only originally intended as a villain, but her look also was all wrong. She basically dressed like Cruella de Vil, talked like a Batman 60s show extra, and was easily defeated. This led to her defecting from the Russian government, and she became what we know of later. One thing that eventually made her so popular is her haunted past. Writers used her mysterious Russian origins to their advantage to build a veil of mystery around her that has made her exceedingly popular, but it wasn't always. Next up is Lobo. This is a really weird one. Despite being a solid cover and a solid overall story arc, it's just not the Lobo we know. It was unclear how they wanted Lobo to turn out, and when you read Omega Men #3, Lobo is not the big mouth cigar smoking cosmic douchebag that we want. He's like a generic bad guy with a weird outfit with not even a trace of the Lobo-ness we've come to need. Did you know that Lobo was actually Stan Lee's favorite DC character? Well, let me tell you something, that wouldn't have happened if they kept Lobo that same way. It actually wasn't until 1988, 5 years later, with Justice League International 18, where we finally got a recharacterization of Lobo to what we know today. That's 5 years of getting it wrong, just to finally get it right. Next up is Rogue. Before becoming fanboys' favorite southern-sounding belle in the X-Men animated series, she was part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and attacked the Avengers and the X-Men. And if you've actually read Avengers Annual 10, she does a pretty good job and holds her own against them, which, as we now know, makes sense because she's as weak or as powerful as she wants, because she can drain the powers of any level tier of mutant. While she eventually found redemption under the care of Professor X, this first impression was a little bit tough. With powers that revolved so heavily around draining others, it's easy to see why she's one of the most sympathetic characters in the Marvel Universe. Next up is Green Arrow. When Green Arrow first came out, he was literally just a green Batman with more outdated projectiles. The similarities were glaring. Ollie drove an arrow car and had an arrow cave and had an annoying upbeat sidekick by the name of Speedy. The presence of an arrow signal, Queen's everyday guise as a millionaire playboy. were just two further commonalities that didn't make things any less obvious. Queen finally lost all his riches thanks to the ONeill and Adams run, who revamped everything. They transformed him into a 1960s radical with leftist beliefs and a high sense of morality, and the hard-traveling heroes arc of the Green Lantern Green Arrow ended its publishing run as the most significant comic of the 1970s. This interpretation served as the model for all future renderings of the character, but he didn't used to be that way. Next up is Wolverine, and this isn't necessarily a bad first impression, it's just such a far cry from what we now know. Probably the best example on the list of characters that we are super glad was not just a one-off. Wolverine was intentionally just another foe of the Hulk to fight, but this time he was Canadian. Ooh. It certainly wasn't a bad impression again, like some of the others, but it was a far cry from what we know today, and possibly one of Marvel's most fleshed out and interesting characters. It's not how it was intended, but we're all glad that fate took the reins on this one. Giving you my final three, we got Hawkeye. Clint Barton was mistaken for a criminal, and as a result, Iron Man had to fight him. They both refused to give up after the initial fight, which solidified Hawkeye's reputation as a tough adversary. Even though Hawkeye had the best of intentions, Tony wasn't immediately trusting of him. His initial encounter with Iron Man demonstrated how powerful a hero he could be before he joined the Avengers as an ally. Hawkeye was able to change and become into the figures readers know and love, thanks to Iron Man vouching for his abilities. Second to last, we got Flash Thompson. Not Flash, Flash Thompson. Peter Parker's time in high school was made miserable by this bro, despite the fact that the two eventually became good friends. Flash, stereotypical jock bully, thought less of Peter because of his aptitude in books and commitment to his crafts. Ironically, he likewise looked up to Spider-Man without realizing that Peter was hiding behind the mask. Parker and Flash subsequently became friends while attending college, and when Flash transformed into Agent Venom, it helped to restore Parker's reputation. Flash was the worst when he started out. He became a good friend and eventually a really cool character, but God, that guy was a prick. And finally, I'm going to hit you with the question. Originally a Charlton character, Ditko's design, the character was a boring journalist that just beat the crap out of everyone in his path. There's no dimension, no lasting appeal, no substance. 2 decades later, DC acquired the characters and a few other characters' rights from the Charlton comics. Fun fact, Rorschach from Watchmen was actually inspired by the question. Anyways, ONeill killed off this original incarnation of the character to make way for a more Zen-like figure, which led to the creation of ONeill and Cohen's Question book, which is one of the best comics ever. The rest, as they say, is history, and the Question is now regarded as one of DC's greatest heroes ever. They just had to get him out of that two-dimensional crap. Anyway, guys, I know I couldn't have caught them all, so drop down below if you think I missed a good one. Let me know and keep on hunting. For this entire week, we're going to do 30% off all Hulk, including keys. Make sure to come down to Sentiment Depot Antiques and Collectibles, where I'm set up with all of my comics, located at 238 West Delaware Ave, Pennington, New Jersey. Open every day except for Monday and Tuesday. Enjoy 10% off from Wednesday to Friday. See you there.